My name's Rob. I am a paramedic with West Midlands Ambulance Service. I've worked for the ambulance service for around 4.5 years now and been qualified as a paramedic for 2 of those. I thought about becoming a paramedic for years. It's something I wanted to do since I was a child. When I was really little, I wanted to become a doctor, and I kind of realised that was a lot of work. And being a paramedic seemed like an easier option.
Yeah.
I've discovered since then it's a very different job to being a doctor. You're in a different environment every time you deal with another patient, which obviously brings its own challenges, and it's kind of an exciting aspect of the job. I wanted to do it because I fancied helping people. It seems like a really good way to be able to help people in all sorts of situations, whether they're in mental health crisis, whether they just need some advice, or whether they're quite literally going to die if you don't intervene. It's quite a good way to be able to try and provide that help to people. We attend quite a lot of call-outs where an ambulance isn't necessary, either people whose condition perhaps doesn't warrant an emergency ambulance and they could have waited to see their own doctor. It could be a case where someone did have an issue but that problem's resolved itself and no one's thought to call us back and cancel us. And in the worst case scenario, we often go to people who have made a hoax call, who've rang 999 maliciously in order to get an ambulance response that isn't needed because there's no patient there. It's really frustrating. There's not an infinite number of ambulances on the road. There's only so many of us, and whilst we're dealing with a patient or no patient that doesn't need an ambulance, we're not available to deal with someone with a potentially life-threatening condition, and that's really frustrating. I've got a lot of skills I can bring to someone who needs their life saving, and when I can't use those for someone who does need them, it can be quite a drain. Per call, for an ambulance to arrive at a location, assess a patient and determine a treatment plan, costs about £175 to the NHS and the taxpayer each time that happens. If that ambulance conveys a person to hospital or another treatment centre, it's £205 in total. So it's quite a lot of money that's coming out of a pot that's paid for by taxpayers, sometimes on things where there's no ambulance even needed. There's a whole range of other ways that people can get help if they need it. People can visit their own pharmacy, and they've got lots of medications that they can give for minor ailments and plenty of advice that they're able to offer as well. People can visit their own GP. Sometimes it can be a bit slow getting an appointment, but usually if you chase them, you can get one. People can call the 111 service, which is non-emergency and is there for advice and guidance and getting things like out-of-hours GP appointments. There's also an option for people to get themselves to A&E. I think a lot of people have a perception that the only way into accident and emergency is with an ambulance, or maybe that they'll be seen quicker if we take them. That simply isn't the case, and people are more than free to get themselves to A&E if they think their problem warrants a visit to A&E but perhaps doesn't need an emergency ambulance to get them there. People should call 999 for an ambulance if someone is unresponsive, if they will not wake up at all, if they're not breathing or they have any problems with their breathing, someone could call an ambulance. People should also call an ambulance for anyone with any major bleeding, anyone who's showing signs of a stroke, or anyone with any pain in their chest, because that could be related to their heart. The other times people should call are injuries where maybe a person is unable to get themselves to a place of treatment because of their injuries. People should also call for anyone with an illness where the severity of their illness means that they've been told to call an ambulance if they suffer an episode of it. I've been to some really heartwarming cases in my time as a paramedic. One of the moments that particularly tugs on my heartstrings a little bit was a case of a lady in her 80s who'd suffered a cardiac arrest. Her heart stopped beating in the street and she was, for all intents and purposes, dead. I arrived with my crewmates and another ambulance. We made efforts to try and restart her heart whilst her husband of over 60 years watched. We managed to get her heart going again. She made no effort to breathe for herself, and the time that we were with her, she didn't wake up. We took her to the hospital very quickly, all the time helping her to breathe and ensuring her heart was still beating for itself, which it carried on doing. I drove the ambulance. Her husband came in the front with me, and as I was fighting through the traffic, he asked me what was happening, and I explained to him what we'd done so far, and he said, "Do you think she'll die?" And I said, "I'll be very honest with you. I can't promise that she won't die. We've done everything we can to try and prevent that. However, these situations usually don't end very well, and there is a very real chance that she will die." And as he sat there in the passenger seat of the ambulance and I fought my way through the Birmingham city centre rush hour traffic on blue lights with sirens going, he sat and he said, "I'm really sorry, I'm going to have a little cry." And he took his glasses off and just cried for 20 seconds in the passenger seat of the ambulance. And then he put his glasses back on and went, "Oh, I'm really sorry for that, thank you." And that was that. And it broke my heart, the fact he'd not only kind of realised the gravity of the situation, but that he's such a gent that he took the time to apologise for the fact he wanted to cry for his wife of 60 years. Unfortunately, she died in the end, but I hope that the time we spent with him prepared him for that a little bit more and made it a bit easier for him to cope with. Alongside dealing with the serious stuff and the heartbreaking stuff, we do go to some cases where we're simply not needed. I always recall one case. We went to a chap who'd told the call takers he'd got chest pain, and when we arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning, he was stood on his doorstep with his case packed, ready for the hospital. And we asked him what was wrong, and he said he'd got urinary retention, so his body wasn't passing urine anymore. He knew he needed to be seen by someone for that, and was quite mobile on his feet in a bit of pain, but what he'd done was effectively lied to the call taker in order to get an ambulance to get himself to hospital that bit sooner. There's other options he could have taken. He could have got himself there, he could have taken a taxi, he could have arranged the community nurses to come out and sort that problem for him, and unfortunately got an ambulance at a cost of over £170. We sometimes go to kids whose parents have rang us and they don't really need us either. I went to one baby once and the complaint was that the baby wouldn't stop crying, and as I arrived, baby's in mum's arms and not crying, which was odd. And my first question is, what's happened? And they said that the baby won't stop crying, and I pointed out that at that moment in time the baby had stopped crying. They said, "Oh no, he cries if we put him down." Now the logical answer to me is, don't put him down. I'm not a parent, I'm not an expert, but I would say if your baby cries when you put it down, just pick him up again. That was the advice we gave, and advised that perhaps they went and spoke to their GP if the baby quite wasn't settling as they expected him to, and they definitely didn't need an emergency ambulance if it happened again.